Justice delayed. Truth undeniable. In a quiet courtroom far from television cameras, a single audio recording would overturn certainty, authority, and pride. Before the verdict changed, before silence fell, a Filipino cleaner stood invisible before power. This is the story of how a Canadian judge dismissed her words, until the building itself decided to speak. The courtroom sat inside a newly renovated International Arbitration Center in Manila, funded by foreign investors and overseen by visiting legal authorities. The flags were polished, the floors spotless. Among those who cleaned them each night was Liza Morales, a middle-aged Filipino woman who wore borrowed uniforms and carried her silence like a habit. Liza had worked there for 4 years, unseen by lawyers, clerks, and visiting judges. She wiped fingerprints from glass walls where decisions worth millions were made. She emptied trash after midnight hearings. She knew which lights stayed on longest. She knew which doors locked late. And she knew what she heard one evening. She was not meant to be present. That night, a private mediation session ran past midnight. A Canadian mining firm faced a Filipino community cooperative over land disputes in Mindanao. Tempers had been contained during daylight. But after hours, when official translators left, voices changed. Liza was cleaning an adjacent corridor when raised English voices slipped through an unsealed door. She paused, mop still dripping. Inside, she heard threats disguised as legal certainty. She heard laughter when compensation figures were discussed. She heard someone say, calmly, that the locals would fold once permits were frozen. She did not understand every word, but she understood enough to feel something heavy settle in her chest. Weeks later, when the cooperative alleged coercion during the mediation, Liza was called unexpectedly as a witness. It startled everyone. A cleaner had no place in international arbitration. Still, procedure allowed testimony. She stood before the bench, palms sweating, eyes lowered, speaking slowly in English learned from late-night television. Presiding over the hearing was Justice Malcolm Reed, a retired Canadian appellate judge known for procedural discipline. He listened politely but without visible interest. As Liza described overhearing intimidation, his expression remained neutral. When she finished, he adjusted his glasses and asked a single question about her proximity to the room. Her answer was imperfect. Her English faltered. She measured distance by footsteps, not meters. The courtroom felt colder. Justice Reed thanked her, then addressed counsel. He noted inconsistencies. He emphasized hearsay. He reminded the room that serious allegations required reliable evidence, not impressions from custodial staff. Liza returned to work the same evening. No one spoke to her. The lawyers avoided her eyes. She scrubbed the same floors, emptied the same bins. But something had shifted. She felt exposed. She replayed the judge's tone in her head. Calm, dismissive, final. She wondered if speaking had been a mistake. The ruling came days later. The allegations of coercion were dismissed. The cooperative's claim weakened. The Canadian firm's counsel appeared relieved. Justice Reed's written opinion cited lack of corroboration. Liza's testimony was mentioned briefly, categorized as unreliable. The case moved forward. Authority had spoken. But buildings remember things people forget. Months earlier, the Arbitration Center had installed a new CCTV system. The cameras were designed for security, not sound. Yet one hallway unit, mistakenly shipped with an audio-enabled model, had been recording everything quietly unnoticed, archived in a forgotten server folder. The discovery came by accident. A Filipino IT technician named Marco was troubleshooting storage capacity. While scanning old files, he noticed unusually large data packets from the mediation wing. Curious, he opened one. Voices filled his headphones. English. Clear. Familiar phrases he recognized from the case everyone thought finished. Marco reported it to his supervisor. The supervisor hesitated. This was sensitive. Foreign judges. International firms. But protocol required reporting anomalies. The file was escalated to internal compliance. Then, reluctantly, to the Arbitration Council. No one knew how to proceed. The case had already been ruled upon. When Justice Reed was notified, he was initially skeptical. Procedural integrity mattered to him. Evidence discovered post-ruling raised concerns, but the counsel insisted on review. The audio file was authenticated, time-stamped, untouched. When played in a closed session, the room went quiet. The voices were unmistakable. Threats were clearer than memory, laughter sharper. Phrases Liza struggled to articulate now played in perfect cadence. There was no ambiguity, no translation issue, no distance problem. The cleaner had been telling the truth. The walls had simply heard it better. Justice Reed listened without interruption. His posture stiffened. He replayed sections. He compared transcripts to his own ruling. For the first time since arriving in Manila, he asked about Liza Morales by name, where she worked, whether she was still employed, whether she had been treated differently afterward. A supplemental hearing was scheduled. Quietly, no press release, no grand announcement. The parties were informed. Liza was called again, this time with counsel present. When she entered the courtroom, she noticed the judge standing, not out of ceremony, but acknowledgement. Justice Reed addressed the court himself. He spoke about fallibility, about assumptions, about voices society trains itself not to hear. He referenced the audio evidence. He corrected the record. He withdrew his prior dismissal of Liza's testimony. His tone was measured, but something human surfaced beneath it. The ruling changed. The mediation was declared compromised. The cooperative's claims were reinstated. Negotiations resumed under stricter oversight. No apology was issued publicly. None was required. The correction spoke louder. Authority had bent, not broken, but it had listened. After the hearing, Justice Reed requested to meet Liza privately, with counsel present. He thanked her, not formally, personally. He told her that courts rely on truth wherever it appears. He admitted he had failed to recognize it in time. She nodded, unsure what to say. Liza did not give interviews. She returned to work the next day. Same corridors, same mop, but colleagues greeted her differently now, with respect, with quiet pride. Marco avoided attention too. He simply fixed systems and went home. The building returned to silence. The cooperative eventually secured revised terms, less land taken, more safeguards. It was not a victory parade, just a correction. Lives adjusted instead of erased. The Canadian firm issued a neutral statement about procedural clarification. Markets moved on. Justice Reed completed his assignment and returned to Canada. In later lectures, he spoke abstractly about listening beyond credentials. He never mentioned Manila by name, but those who knew recognized a reference. Authority learned slowly, sometimes only when evidence refuses to stay buried. Liza's life did not transform overnight. She still rode crowded jeepneys, still counted wages carefully. But something internal shifted. She had stood in a place designed to overlook her and been proven right. Not loudly, not heroically, quietly, permanently. In courtrooms, truth often waits behind titles and accents. It waits behind uniforms designed to blend into walls. It waits for technology, chance, or conscience to amplify it. In this case, it waited behind a ceiling-mounted camera no one remembered to check. Foreign authority arrived with confidence, procedure, prestige. It left corrected, not humiliated, not defeated. Simply reminded that justice does not choose its messengers. It listens when it must, even if that voice comes from someone holding a mop at midnight. There was no celebration, no viral headline, just an amended ruling and a restored balance. In the Philippines, stories like this rarely end with applause. They end with people returning to work, carrying quiet proof that dignity survives scrutiny. The arbitration center remains spotless. The halls echo softly at night. Cameras still record. Most files are never opened, but one remains archived, a reminder that truth does not disappear when ignored. It waits. Liza sometimes pauses outside the mediation wing before cleaning, not out of fear, out of memory. She knows what that room once held. She knows what it tried to hide. And she knows now that even whispered truth leaves a record. Justice delayed is not always justice denied. Sometimes it is justice corrected by those never meant to speak and by systems that accidentally listen. In that quiet courtroom, Filipino humanity did not shout. It endured, and in the end, it was heard.